Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. I was checking Facebook and I saw this today. This is just about an hour ago at the time that I'm recording this. This is another first in 2,000 years. And these events are really piling up. I'm keeping track of them and I feel like these are all signs of the times. It's a sign that the Jews are preparing to receive Messiah, or in other words, the Lord is preparing them for the second coming. It is at fever pitch. That's my assessment of it. There is so much excitement, not across all of Judaism, because you have different types of Jews, just like you have different members of the church that have different attitudes when it comes to the second coming. But the portion of them that are truly looking forward to Messiah, I can tell that they are getting very excited. They're getting more and more bold with things that they're doing like this. This is taking place on the Temple Mount. We're going to get to this in just a minute. I have a couple updates for you before we get into this main story. So, you know that I reached out to Adam. He sent me an email back and said that the practice ceremony for the red heifer was not the real thing. He is actually in contact with the Temple Institute, and it's under the Temple Institute's direction that this is taking place. But I think he didn't know about the other Adam that we looked at on the other podcast. After I sent him the email, I think that he made this video kind of like in response. So you may want to check this out. If you're someone that's interested in the red heifers, he does a really good job giving an update and an explanation as to why that was not the actual thing. So if you have any questions, watch this video. I'll put a link for it in the description box below. And then one more thing before we get to this new first in 2,000 years. This is someone that I watch from time to time. This is called the Torah channel. He is a really nice guy. I really like him. I feel like I could be friends with him in real life. He did a video, let's see, this was yesterday, called Rosh Hashanah is Coming, Messiah is Near. And if you're interested in Judaism and seeing things through their point of view, this is a really good video to watch, especially when we think about the timing of the second coming or significant events of the second coming, because I feel like they could happen on or near Jewish feast days or potentially during certain months on the Hebrew calendar, in this case, Elul. So he points out that right now we're entering into the last year of the Hebrew month called Elul. And Elul is a time when Jews prepare for the new year. Their new year, there's actually 4 new years, but the one that we think of as a new year is on Rosh Hashanah. And it's a very important time because from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur, which is 10 days, these are called the 10 days of awe. They're also known as the high holy days. That it's the holiest time of the year, Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, or in other words, the Feast of Trumpets to the Day of Atonement. And so Elul is a time when Jews prepare for repentance. They prepare for the new year. And essentially, it's like a time of the year where they're, in a sense, the closest to God, like almost in the presence of God. And when it comes to the month of Elul, it's a time that's known as the time when the king is in the field. So why should this potentially matter to us? Because I think the Lord will do some things, or a lot of things, in their language in a way that they understand. And so they put a lot of emphasis on these holy days that come from the Old Testament. And so he would talk to them in a way that they would understand, you know? So this month of Elul, the king is in the field. Let me just point something out really quick. This is on Chabad.org, talking about the month of Elul. And it says, the king's usual place is in the capital city, in the royal palace. Okay, so let's think about Christ and his coming at his second coming. Anyone wishing to approach the king must go through the appropriate channels in the palace bureaucracy and gain the approval of a succession of secretaries and ministers. He must journey to the capital and pass through the many gates, corridors, and antechambers that lead to the throne room. His presentation must be meticulously prepared, and he must adhere to an exacting code of dress, speech, and mannerism upon entering into the royal palace. However, there are times when the king comes out to the fields outside the city. In such times, anyone can approach him. The king receives them all with a smiling face and a radiant countenance. The peasant behind his plow, excuse me, the peasant behind his plow has access to the king in a manner unavailable to the highest ranking minister in the royal court when the king is in the palace. The month of Elul, says Rabbi Schneur Salman, is when the king is in the field. So think about this. As they have this imagery in their minds, wouldn't it be amazing if Christ actually comes during the month of Elul, or on Rosh Hashanah, or on the Day of Atonement? So this is a really special season. And there's reason to believe that it could be significant because you look at the Jewish feast days and you have the fulfillment, so to speak, of these feast days in the New Testament. When Christ came, you have the atonement, the resurrection, the Holy Ghost came during Shavuot, or the Feast of Weeks, otherwise known as Pentecost. But in our own dispensation, it seems like there have been fulfillments, or there have been significant events that have taken place on these feast days from the Old Testament. So, for example, Elijah appeared in the Kirtland Temple on first fruits, which is essentially, we observe it as Easter, but first fruits, Easter, it's essentially the same thing. But in that year, both first fruits on the Hebrew calendar and Easter fell on the same day, and that's when Christ too, but that's when Elijah appeared in the Kirtland Temple. We also have the fall feasts. We were just talking about Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets. That's the day that Joseph Smith received the gold plates, the 22nd of September, 1827. And it's interesting because you think about the Book of Mormon and what it represents. It's a warning call. It's the main tool of the gathering, right? And it's interesting because when you look at older versions of the Book of Mormon, including this one, it had the angel Moroni on the cover blowing a trumpet. I think that the Feast of Trumpets, the main trumpet of these last days, is the Book of Mormon. It's the main tool that's being used for the harvest. So anyway, I just wanted to put that on your radar, and this might be something to look at, this coming month. And then Rosh Hashanah, it's going to start at sundown on the 22nd of September. And then it goes for 2 days, Rosh Hashanah 1, Rosh Hashanah 2. And then you have the 10 days of awe, and Yom Kippur is going to be the second. Well, it's going to start on the 1st of October at sundown. So just a couple days before General Conference. Okay, so let's go back to this. This is the Temple Institute sounding the shofar on the Temple Mount. A shofar is a ram's horn. There's basically two types of trumpets or horns. One is the ram's horn, the shofar, and then the other one is the silver trumpets that were used in the temple. In fact, I'm going to go through a quick timeline of all these things that have been happening for the first time in 2,000 years after we look at this. But when I first saw this, it made me think about this story. This was from August 14th, 2024. First time in 2,000 years, silver temple trumpets sounded on Temple Mount. So here's a picture of it. Now, this is a building where a portion of it juts out over the Temple Mount. It's not actually on the Temple Mount. And so when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, that guy is actually on the Temple Mount. But you have these two types of trumpets that now, for the first time in 2,000 years, have been blown over the Temple Mount, the shofar and the silver temple trumpet. Let's read the text of this. For the first time in 2,000 years, the shofar is being sounded on the Temple Mount. The shofar is the sound of Israel returning to HaShem, or in other words, the Lord. It literally means the name, meaning Yahweh or Jehovah, and the sound of the coming of Gula, or the redemption. What we would think of, our parallel would be the second coming in the millennium. Okay? So let's read it that way. The shofar is the sound of Israel returning to Christ, and the sound of the second coming in millennium. You see? You see why this is probably significant? And then they include Isaiah 27:13. I want to read it from the King James version on the church website. I want to read verses 12 and 13. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall beat off from the channel of the river unto the stream of Egypt, and ye shall be gathered one by one, O ye children of Israel. And it shall come to pass in that day that the great trumpet shall be blown, and they shall come which were ready to perish in the land of Assyria, and the outcasts in the land of Egypt, and shall worship the Lord in the holy mountain at Jerusalem. Now, I haven't done a big study into these verses, but I feel like there's a dualism here. You would have this apply to scattered Israel and the church, how we, the church, are going throughout the entire earth, one by one, finding scattered Israel, bringing them to the Mount of Jerusalem, the holy Mount of Jerusalem, in the sense of bringing them to the temple, because that's essentially, this can be literal, like actual Mount Zion in Jerusalem, but it can also mean going to the temple, making covenants, right? So we have that going on in our church, but I feel like this also applies to the Jews because there's two gatherings going on. And in the case of the Jews, right now it's mostly a physical gathering, actually to Israel and actually to Jerusalem. And then I like this part right here, because when we think about it in the sense of gathering scattered Israel, and it says that the great trumpet shall be blown, well, we were just talking about that. It is being blown. It's being blown. And again, I just want to point out, I think it was very significant in 2020 of all years, after an earthquake, that the angel Moroni dropped his trumpet from the Salt Lake Temple. And then a couple days later, missionaries come home, and then after that, the temples are closed. Things are happening, you guys. Things are happening. Okay, so we have this. They, like I said, are getting just like more and more daring with what they do on the Temple Mount. It seems like the police are being more and more permissive. We've seen audible prayers. It kind of started with that, like audible prayers, because before you can only go up and pray silently. But then people started doing audible prayers. You've had many other people bring things to the Temple Mount that they're not supposed to, which of course we would never condone breaking the law or anything like that. But that's the excitement and what's been going on. And then full body prostrations, which is where you lie down like face first on the ground and like lay your body flat with your arms above your head. And then you have this, and then a few other things that we're going to cover. There's other things that have taken place on the Temple Mount. It's just times are changing, and I don't know what's next. I don't know how many more events are going to take place that haven't taken place in 2,000 years. How many more are there? I don't have a list, but I feel like it's just going to continue. I feel like probably big things are just around the corner at this pace. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a look at my list. This is my spreadsheet. I've renamed it. This used to be called Signs Jewish Specific, but I've decided to move it over here to all these other Judaism tabs that I have. I have a bunch of Judaism tabs, so it just made sense to clump it all together. This is a timeline of just things that could be considered signs to Jews of the coming of Messiah. I have different columns right here. Look at column G. This is first time in 2,000 years. That's what we're focusing on in this video. And as you can see, there have been a lot. especially since President Nelson became president of the church. I have a couple from before his presidency, but starting in about 2021 onward, it's just like every single year, almost, every couple months, there's something happening for the first time in 2,000 years. This is crazy. So instead of just reading it from the spreadsheet, I pulled up all the websites that I used as my source. Most of them are from Israel 365 News. We have Adam to thank for this, and I'm so glad that I'm friends with him and that I have him as a resource. He is so good. He is essentially my Jewish counterpart because he looks at signs the same way that we do. Only his are Jewish specific because he's Jewish. He lives in Israel. Okay, so the first one, this is 2016. Sanhedrin revives 2,000-year-old blessing for counting of Jubilee year. I have a separate spreadsheet for Jubilees. There's different, calendars and different ways that Jubilees are counted. But the Sanhedrin, which is mostly viewed as like an activist group rather than like an authoritative body, but they've started counting the Jubilee years starting in 2016. So we have that. We have this one. This was one of the first videos that I made after I started my channel. I started my channel on August 8th of 2021. This came out August 9th. Levite sings Song of Ascents on the stairs leading to Holy of Holies. And this is the first time in 2,000 years that has happened. He has a YouTube channel, by the way, Yair Levy. I'll put a link for all these articles in the description box below. But yeah, here's like another one singing on the Temple Mount. Even though it's not like up the steps up here, it's still the Temple Mount area. So we have that. Here's another thing on the Temple Mount. First time since Second Temple, rabbis convene to implement biblical law on Temple Mount. And here they are. And there's a YouTube video. Unfortunately, it's all in Hebrew, but even if it was in English, it'd probably be, unless you're really interested in Judaism, it might be a little bit boring. But this is a significant thing. They had this religious meeting on the Temple Mount and recorded it. Then, of course, we have the red heifers. This is CBN. This was back in 2022, but the article is from this year. But you have the red heifers that came to Israel in 2022, the first kosher red heifers that would be suitable for the ceremony of the red heifer. So you have that going on. We've talked about that quite a bit lately. Let's see, October 2024, for the first time since the Second Temple, shofar sounded on Temple Mount. Wait, it says shofar sound? Oh, but this is from that building, though. Shofar and silver trumpet sounded from Temple Mount. So not actually on the Temple Mount, but this goes along with that other one that we were looking at, this right here. Sorry, I accidentally pulled up two different articles, but talking about the same thing. We have this, the Ark of the Covenant, that they would use in the Third Temple. From what I can tell, I think there have been a couple other replicas, but this would be like the most authentic or official one that they would use if they actually rebuilt the Third Temple. And I did a very interesting video about that. You can read this article. This is Jewish News Syndicate, and this is actually pretty fascinating. Okay. We have this, for the first time in 2,000 years, priests bless soldiers going to war. And this one is interesting. This, of course, started with the October 7th attacks. But you have these Jewish priests, the Kohanim, they started giving blessings to soldiers going to war. And they haven't done that in 2,000 years. And what might interest you is that they do it by the laying on of hands. So this story talks about a young Cohen in, I think, New York, New Jersey, where you had like Israelis that were there or people with dual citizenship that were being deployed. And so he put out like on an app, like social media, like, does anybody going to war, would you like to have a blessing, and then he gave them blessings at the airport. So that seems pretty significant to me. Here's another one. Full dress Cohen sighted on Temple Mount. Again, a Cohen is a Jewish priest who's descended from Aaron. The tribe of Levi in Old Testament times were the ones that had the Aaronic priesthood, but you had only the sons of Aaron that were priests, and then the rest of the tribe of Levi were Levites. They essentially had the roles of the equivalent of modern day deacons and teachers, but priests were descendants of Aaron. And here's pictures of it right here. You have a priest wearing temple robes up on the Temple Mount. Haven't seen that in 2,000 years. And it just happened in 2024. This is crazy. And then, let's see, there's this one, June of this year. For the first time in 2,000 years, Israeli milled to produce semolina kosher for temple offerings. That may not sound very exciting, but it's just more excitement. This article talked about how it's actually hard to produce this. It's not really economical. You're not going to make a lot of money by doing this, but they're doing it because they're preparing for the temple, and they want to prepare the bread correctly so that it's kosher for temple offerings. And then the last one that I have, Israeli police stop Shavuot wave offering on Temple Mount. Shavuot is the Feast of Weeks, otherwise known as Pentecost. And again, you had, well, I'm not going to play the video here, but you have a Cohen in temple robes. You see the Arabs back there watching, and of course they're upset about it. But you have a Cohen and then a Jewish guy giving 2 loaves of bread to the priest. And then after that, they got arrested. Well, I don't know if they were arrested, but they were stopped. But this was the first time in 2,000 years that that's taken place. So that's what I have right now. I've added a few things to the spreadsheet. I already knew about them and made videos about them, but I guess I didn't add them to the spreadsheet. So the new things added to the spreadsheet is the counting of the Jubilee years, and then the red heifers, which I have more red heifer stuff on a different spreadsheet for temple preparation. So the one that we were just looking at was for Jewish specific signs, but this one is called Judaism temple preparation. And there's several red heifer items on here. You can easily see them in column I. So we got that. And then this right here, for the first time in 2,000 years, the shofar has been sounded on the Temple Mount. So, I mean, I don't know. Make of it what you will. Do you think it's significant? Let me know. Put it in the comments. Do you think it's significant? I feel like it is because it goes along with so many other things happening in the world and in the church. Just so many things that we haven't seen before, and it feels like things are hastening. And I do believe that's what we're seeing. The Lord is performing his work among the Jews, preparing them in a way that they understand for the second coming. Okay, that's going to be for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.